But Pastor Sean and I were talking earlier, and we talked this morning too. We talk all the time. It's not about planning what you want to say. It's about saying it with intent and having the reasons behind what you say. Not exactly the words all the time, but the way you say it and the way you get through to people. So I'll start my story way back in the late 1900s when I was a kid. So in the early 80s, my Grammy was the bee's knees. She was the best person in the world. We would go to her trailer park, and my sister and I would spend hours frolicking in the garden that she had. She had string beans and tomatoes, and we would just gulp them down like there was nothing else that was better in the world. And then she was diagnosed with breast cancer. I think I was probably 8 or 9 years old. So there was a whole thing with that. And I didn't know anything about breast cancer or surgeries or hospitals because everything in my life was golden and sparkling at 8 or 9 years old. So she had her surgery. She had one breast removed. And she ended up moving in with us, which I thought was great. Grammy's in my house now. I wonder what kind of garden she's going to grow at my house. And then I found out that the whole trailer park was shut down because it was a Superfund site. They found barrels upon barrels of seeping chemicals, and they had to shut the whole thing down. So I'm sure Grammy wanted to live with us, but that wasn't why that she did. And that's how she got cancer. So she had the breast removed. She was moved in with us. She was awesome. She had 6 good years. I remember counting them. We went to bingo every week. I was like her right-hand person. She came to all of my concerts. My sister and I were into music and plays and musicals and everything. We had parties and all sorts of stuff. And she would drive me to and from if my mother couldn't. And then she was diagnosed with diabetes. All right, so we deal with that. We go to the doctor. We have help. We have support around us, all of the cousins, everybody. Because Grammy's here. We're going to support her. She was always there for us, right? So she did okay with that. Everything was regulated. Now I'm about 18. So I graduated high school. I started college. I was like, oh, hey, Grammy, look at me. You know, she was so proud of me. She said, way to go, Pee-wee. I was Pee-wee. Then she started getting dizzy. And we're like, oh, maybe her diabetes isn't regulated. Turns out that 80% of her carotid artery was clogged. So she was passing out from that. But she was hiding it. She was always tough as nails. So she had surgery for that too. Just wasn't the same after that. She wasn't really the same Grammy anymore. I ended up being her caretaker at that point. I was done with college. I was doing my part-time job, just, living life. But this was Grammy. I had to be there for Grammy. She was there for me. She was the best thing in my life, and so I have to be the best thing in hers. So I made her toast, and I measured out everything, all her medications. I got everything ready. And then she just wasn't getting any better. My nursing care wasn't enough. So she was admitted to hospice. Then my mom called one day. I was at my job, and she said, you better hurry, come quick. Grammy's not going to make it. She's not doing well. Come say your goodbyes. And by the time I got there, she was already gone. So at first I blamed my mother for not telling me in time. I blamed a lot of things. I blamed a lot of people. I blamed the world. I blamed God. I blamed everything around me. But then, you know what? I looked back. And all the time I got to spend with her, giving her everything she needed, making her toast just right. And one Splenda in her coffee. That was it. That's all she needed. That's all she needed. I was all she needed. So I think that my part in her good days were my goodbye. So fast forward to, I don't know, a few years ago. Luther is 6 weeks old. You all know Luther. He bounces off the walls here. So 6 weeks old, this teeny tiny thing. He was born 3 weeks early, so he was teeny tiny. He was barely 11 pounds. Heaving and hoeing, couldn't breathe, you know, looking at me like, Mom, help me, help me, help me. So being the helper that I am, which I learned from a very young age, having a Grammy, I took him to the doctor. We had a nebulizer, we had the albuterol, we had the saline, we had everything in this little teeny tiny face. And I'm just like, this is just not working. The doctor didn't believe me, is what I thought. So I brought him back in, and I'm like, he's not getting better. You gave me all the stuff, you gave me all the pills, all the liquid, all the breathing stuff. He is not getting better. So he was admitted with RSV. We spent 3 full days, maybe 4 nights, 4 days. I don't know. He had so many tubes and wires. I didn't know what to think. It was kind of touch and go for a little bit there. He never really was intubated, but he still had all the tubes. And he developed pneumonia while we were there, too. I remember the nurses yelling at me because all I wanted to do was nurse him. That's all I was doing. He was exclusively breastfed. So they would yell at me because all the alarms would go off when I pulled him out of the bassinet to nurse him, but that's what calmed him down. And the oxygenation thing, the pulse oximeter, right? It would go off every time, but then I would readjust it because I knew how to put it back on his little teeny tiny toe. So anyway, he rallied after about 4 days, and his oxygenation was great. They did like the capillary refill time, all that stuff was awesome. So finally he got to go home. What a day that was. I couldn't focus. I was just elated because this little boy who struggled through so many times of just failed drugs and failed help, and then here I am sticking with him, and I knew I wasn't alone. I knew it wasn't just me and him in the hospital room. I knew that either my Grammy was there, thanking me, saying, here you go, you get another chance to take care of somebody. So my journey is not one specific quest or realization, but it's really just, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is why I'm here. And journeys don't end. They just change. And you can't type up stuff. Like, I don't even really need this. I just didn't want to forget the important parts. But things keep changing, and you could sit here in silence by yourself after everyone leaves, lights on, lights off, whatever it takes. And you will have those moments where you think of your Grammy, or you think of, how can I grow from this? How can I learn from this? How can I continue my journey? Because the journey never ends.